Chapter 1. Introduction. It was November 20th, 1945, and the eyes of the world were focused on the town of Nuremberg, Germany. An international court was about to convene with judges from the United States, Great Britain, France and the Soviet Union. The courtroom was jammed with spectators. The accused filled the first two rows of wooden benches and were preparing their pleas of innocence to the charge of war crimes. These men were not ignorant peasants or unlearned second-class citizens. They were some of the most brilliant military and political leaders of the world. Also represented were intellectual industrialists, bankers, scientists, professors, and engineers. They would all plead innocent to the indictments by virtue of their obedience to political and military superiors. One by one each man rendered his plea of not guilty. Wilhelm Keitel. To a soldier, orders are orders. I wouldn't complain if I were accused of having started the war. One only did my duty and obeyed orders. Hermann Göring. Are you a man of integrity? I have always stood for my convictions. What is your chief conviction? To work for my country. Baldur von Schirach. Through me, youth has learned to believe in Hitler. I taught them to have faith in him. Wilhelm Frick. As far as the charge against me is concerned, I have a clear conscience. My whole life was service to my people and fatherland. By the fulfillment of my legal and moral duty, I think I have earned punishment just as little as the tens of thousands of dutiful German officials who have now been imprisoned only because they carried out their duties. This trial filled 16,000 pages of testimony both for and against these men. It lasted 218 days, which at that time was the longest trial ever conducted. Stenographers, interpreters, photographers, the press, and people from all over the world entered the courtroom to hear the verdict. The defendants entered single file from the prison and sat down. Everyone arose as the 8 judges entered the room. Then each man heard his own verdict to the charges. Guilty. These men had attempted to defend themselves on the grounds of obedience to their superiors. They sustained and supported the laws of the land. They believed in being subject to the leaders of their nation. This seemingly logical and assumed justification sounded reasonable because to disobey or criticize their leaders would have jeopardized their position and could have placed them in the ranks of traitors or enemies. Nevertheless, the court properly ruled them guilty. A few of these men learned a valuable lesson from the experience of that trial, that totalitarian trust in men, regardless of their position, can prove disastrous. Some of them responded by saying, Karl Donitz. Authoritarianism has proved itself best in the military leadership of all armies in the world. On the basis of this experience, I considered it was also right in political leadership, especially for a people in the hopeless condition of the German people in 1932. But this has been proved wrong, for human nature apparently is not capable of applying the power of this principle for good ends. Hans Fritzsche. But I beg you to try to grasp the indignation of those who expected nothing but good of Hitler, and who now see how their good faith, their goodwill, and their idealism were abused. I find myself in this situation of the disillusioned men together with many, many other Germans. Say Sinkwart. The fact that we obeyed the Führer cannot take the responsibility from those of us who had the courage and strength to stand in the front line in this fight for the existence of our people. In the days of triumph we stood in the front rank, and thus we have the privilege of standing in the front rank in misfortune. By our example, we help to build a new future for our people. The Nuremberg Trial, by Joe Hadecker, pages 366, 370, 379. This story is but one in a continuous concourse of similar incidents of those who are led into error by their undaunted faith in superiors. Total submission and blind faith in military, political, or religious leaders is wrong. To disobey or neglect moral law is not justified through obedience to men in any position of leadership. Few mortals ever learn this invaluable lesson, that each must live by his own light. He must accept the responsibility for his own salvation, because he cannot live on borrowed light, nor be led by another's sleeve. In some instances, to disobey may be a virtue, and to refuse may prove a hero. True principles are men's safest standard in this world and the next.